Hello everyone and welcome to my Scottish Summit session. My name is Ficko and I will talk about PCFs and how can you speed up your development process with the tools created by community and other third-party vendors that allows us to get better development process in the PCF space. Okay, let's start first with our sponsors. A huge thanks to ScriptRunner, DQ Global, Proxima 3, Redspire, and Genesis and Hitachi Solutions for making this event more amazing and easier to produce, because of course you can do that alone. So huge shout out to all those companies that help us doing this summit. So first of all, who am I? So for all people who don't know me, I'm a software developer based in Zagreb, Croatia. I'm like 5 years in Dynamics and Power App space now, and I'm mostly focused on development for the platform, so PCFs, webhooks, APIs and stuff like that. And I'm also awarded for Business Applications MVP for 2 years now, I think. And all that said, let's jump into the presentation itself. First of all of you that produced some PCFs, you know that you need to have few essential tools to make everything happen. So first of all, you need some IDE that you will write your code, and my personal preference for this one is Visual Studio Code, because it integrates all the elements that I need: code editor, integrated terminal, and source control. So everything I need is inside my IDE. I don't need to jump in and out from my editor just to make something happen elsewhere. As we are developing the web technologies, we need Node.js and NPM as the, like we say, standard in the modern web development. So a lot of web developers use it nowadays, and why wouldn't you use it here too? But with all of that, we need to interact with terminal quite a lot, and that's not the best user experience that we want from our development process, because most of us come from the backend development from C#, .NET, and we are used to big Visual Studio that has all the tools we need in graphical way. So we want that in Visual Studio Code too, to achieve more with graphical elements. Microsoft didn't help us with it still, but I hope it will come in near future. But community is always there to make it happen and to speed up your process with community tools. Okay, let's start with the first one. So we need to create a new project. How can we create a new project? We can create a new project with Apps CLI, which is the base tool for the PCF development. Without it, we can do lots of stuff with the PCF projects. So you need to download the CLI tool to initialize your project. It's a command line interface tool that needs a lot of commands to be remembered, and those commands are easy to forget. For example, if you're not working with a PCF for a week or so, it's easy to forget how the actual command looks like, and you should always check the help inside the CLI to see what do you need to pass as parameters. And that's not the best way to interact for human. But in the ALM perspective, we want to build our pipelines around it. Of course, it's a great way to interact with it, because we just pass the parameters, computer will know what to do next, it will remove human errors, but when we are actually developing it, we don't want to type commands over and over again just to achieve some actions. It's not limited to PCF only, it is wider and wider every day. We can now generate projects for plugins, we can interact with Power Apps portal, for example, creating authentication profiles to get our solutions, stuff like that. But yeah, that's in the LM space great, but not when we are developing some stuff on our local machines. So as I said, it's made for machines, not humans. We need something else to be more performant in that way. Okay, and how can we do that? So the first tool is Yeoman PCF generator. That's created by me. This is the first community tool. It's a tool created with Yeoman. Yeoman is a framework that allows us to create code generation tools that will help us to kickstart our projects or just insert something in our project with a predefined templates. And it's really great, and in PCF development I think it's a great way to kickstart your project, because you don't need to think about the commands anymore. You will just be presented with some questions, as you can see on the left. You answer those questions and the commands will be executed for you. And if you know to create a whole project with all the solution parts, stuff like that, you need to execute multiple commands, and maybe you can't remember the execution order every time. What do I need to run next? And so that's why the Yeoman generator does that for you, and you will get a project structure with sample files like CSS, templates for translation regex files, preview images. You just need to replace it with your code and get things going. There are also few sub-generators that will help you with generating documentation. For example, you can generate a README file that is created from your manifest. So if you have everything filled in your manifest, like descriptions, name, property types, it will generate a pretty README file that you can then put on your GitHub, export, or whatever you want to do with it. You can also add new regex files, so you just select a language and new regex template will be added for that language in your project. Or you can maybe generate a GitHub action if you are using GitHub that will do the automation and build and release your component as a release on GitHub. Okay, so enough talking, it's time to show you something. Let's go first to my web browser and on a GitHub page for PCF generator. You can easily download the PCF generator by executing those two npm commands. So you first need to install Yeoman in general, and then the PCF generator plugin for that Yeoman generator. After you do that, make sure you have the path variables set for your MS build. That's the first part, and you of course need Apps CLI to get it working. After we install the Yeoman generator with a few commands, we can open our terminal and see how it's working. So I'm in my C folder. I need to create a folder for my project. So make directory PCF test. Okay, change directory to that new directory, and now when we are in the directory we want, we just spin yo PCF and add one argument that sets force. Force basically forces the Yeoman that overrides all the files in the process of generation. That's important because otherwise every time we want to update file, it will pop us with a question: do you want to update that file? Do you want to override it or drop changes or something like that? When we execute the command, Yeoman generator will start. You will see the Yeoman that says, yo, time to code your PCF component. Okay, and as you can see, checking prerequisites. It will check the prerequisites for you, and if the prerequisites are okay, it will spin up the generator and start asking you some questions. So control namespace. In the brackets, you will see the default values that is set to fits in my example, so let's stick with it. Okay, I want to make a control name, so PCF test control. For example, I want field or data set, I want field. Do I want to add some additional npm packages, React or something like that? No, in this case, publisher prefix for my solution will be fits also. So publisher name is my name. And when I build my component, do I want to generate managed, unmanaged, or both solutions? I will choose both. And now the process will started. It will create files for me. As you can see, few files are created, few files are updated, and it will start installing the npm dependencies. And after that, it will execute the ms build for the first time. That will finally create the solution structure for you too. So when we now open the Visual Studio Code and open that folder, open folder, we said it's on our C drive, on users, my user, and the PCF test. Select folder and open it in Visual Studio Code. We see that the project structure is a bit bigger than you expected with Power Apps CLI. And why is that so? If we open the read folder for our control, we see the CSS file, so example CSS, and how you need to prefix all your CSS styles to make it work in any environment. We have the image, which is a preview image set. You just need to replace that image and it will work with your control. Just name it preview.png and you have a preview image in your control. Strings, so we have a basic English resix template. So if we open that, we can see that the whole template is here. We just need to add values at the bottom and the translation will work out of the box practically. Okay, and we see there's a solution folder created for us too. Then we have a source created here, and everything is here. It's perfect because we can just start typing our code. We don't need to remember all the commands. We need to focus on the code, not the actual initialization of our project. And as we can see, the build process succeeded. And if we open the solution in the file explorer and search for bin folder debug, we can see that it produced managed and unmanaged solution already for us. And it's really great way to start. You now just need to input your code and you're good to go. And that's basically the base functionality for the PCF generator. Let's go back to the presentation and we'll go back to Visual Studio a little bit later. Okay. So the second tool is focused on development itself. When we are developing control, we don't want to again type some command line commands. We want to click around, initiate builds and stuff like that with a simple click, not typing in command. So we have an XRM toolbox tool called PCF Builder that's created by Danish. It's a graphical interface for the Apps CLI. So everything you can do in Apps CLI, you can do in the PCF Builder, and a bit more because it's expanded to a more convenient tool. You can execute the commands by a simple click. As you can see, there are create, build, things like that. You just simply click on it, populate all the data needed on the form, and it will be executed. No need to know the execute commands for those kind of actions. You visually see all the properties all at once on one screen. That's also a really great thing, because you see the version of your control, the version of your solution. Do you have preview image? Do you have any CSS files, regex files associated with your command, all inside one graphical interface? And I think that it's really beginner friendly. If you're starting with PCF, I think that PCF Builder is the great way to do it, because everything you need you will find here, and as you are used to clicking on the graphical interfaces, this is the tool to start with. And you can see the download link down below. You just click on it and it will point you to the download location, or you can simply search for it in your XRM toolbox. And Danish created one more thing, and that's PCF Builder, but this time for Visual Studio Code. Basically, it has all the features from the XRM Toolbox tool, but presented in a bit different way, because it's a Visual Studio Code extension. It also has the graphical interface for most commands, because you will just pick the command you want from the drop down, execute that. You will be popped up with input text boxes that you need to populate to achieve the action result, and no need to remember the commands once again. You can see all the commands by clicking Ctrl+Shift+P and type PCF, and you'll be presented with all the commands there. The cool thing about VS Code extension is the great addition that of course you don't have in the XRM toolbox is IntelliSense. If you try to edit manifest file manually, you know that you need to know the syntax or copy paste it all around just to achieve something that you want. But with IntelliSense, you will be presented with the values that you need to input and the snippets that will just pop in after you type a few characters. And it's really cool because it really fastens up the development process, because we are used to that in the big brother of Visual Studio Code, the original Visual Studio Code, where we can get IntelliSense for almost everything. The cool thing here is also that a Yeoman PCF generator is integrated in the tool. So if you want to create and initialize the project from the Visual Studio Code, you can simply do it, run the generator command, and it will start asking you questions just like the generator is asking you in the CLI, and after that you will have your project ready to go. You can find the extension in Visual Studio Code extensions, or you can go on the link shown on the slide and check it out online, and just initiate install from there, and it will just open your Visual Studio Code and finish the installation. Okay, let's go to the demo part once again to show those two tools in action. As I said, first open up your XRM toolbox and search for the PCF Builder. Once we open the PCF Builder, we have location. That's the main part, the location of your command. It is pointing to my demo command that I will demo later here, and if the graphical interface is not populated, just hit reload details and it will repopulate all the details, and you will have green ticks all around it. Everything is good, and you can start clicking your actions here. For example, I want to open that in Visual Studio Code. No worries, just hit a button and you will have the project in your Visual Studio Code. But imagine if I made some changes, I want to build my command and I don't know which command do I need to type in the command line. As you can see, it is just typing the commands for you in the command line. So I want to initiate a build for my component. I hit build, it inputs the command and build started, and you can see the output here if your build passed or got succeeded code, so everything's good. You can see the version of your control and you can tick the version increment here. As you can see, I click build and it increments the version of our control automatically. You can initialize the solution. Our solution is already initialized. You can see the version here. You can build your solutions. Click build and it will build the solution for you, and you can also deploy it with a pack push command if you have authentication profile registered on your PC. If you do so, just click deploy, pick the profile and deploy your control. And as I said, it's really easy to click around, build and test. For example, it initiates the watch, it builds the command, initialize the watch, then opens the debug harness for you. So you can do that also from this tool. Okay, and now we will see how that works, all those commands inside the Visual Studio Code. So when we open the Visual Studio Code, we basically don't need to leave our Visual Studio anymore. We can do everything from here. So Control-Shift-P opens up the Visual Studio Code console, but if we search for the PCF, we can see all the commands here that we can execute with this extension. So build a component, test a component, generate a readme file, that's a Yeoman generator feature here, add resix file, it's also feature from Yeoman generator, and you can see all the actions we can do in the XRM toolbox tool we can do here. So for example, let's go add a new resix file. First time when we execute that command, it asks us for the command name. So this one is called GitHub avatar control. Okay, and we want to, since I'm a creation, let's add a creation resix file. Okay, as you can see, it inputted Yeoman generator command for resix file here, and if we check the strings, we have some changes. We see that if I expand this a little bit, we see that a creation template is here. So we basically, all we need to do is edit the data here, and the translation will be added to our control. And why is that so? Because it also added that resix file to our manifest. We don't need to worry about it. Every time we add a new resix file, it will be added to the manifest file too, and it's pretty easy to use. Now we can just add a new resix files, for example Albanian, boom, and the new resix files for Albanian language will be added here. It's pretty cool and neat, and this is how you do it really easy with simple Control-Shift-P and searching for the command you want to execute. I was talking about the IntelliSense feature, and that's a really great one. So if we open the manifest file, okay, here we are, and we want to add a new property. We just type prop. As you can see, the property snippet pops up. We just hit enter, and boom, you have the new property node here. Okay, let's go test, display name test, description key test. Okay, and we want, which types do we use here in property? Maybe you don't know, you need to look up in the documentation for it, but no, just go control space and you will see all the values that you can input here marked in orange color. So I want to, for example, single line of text, but there are also subtypes of single line, and I want to choose the most common one, text, but you can choose any one you want here. So just choose that and you're good to go. And if you want to, for example, add a feature usage, boom, you have a feature usage node with feature name. So okay, we want to get a new feature. For example, we want to use web API. Boom, easy as that. We now instruct our component that we will use web API in our control. That's so easy, isn't it? Yeah, perfect. And for example, just to show you simple how we can build our component, just execute the build and see if everything went okay. And now we build our component with this simple choosing build command from the dropdown. We don't need to know the actual commands for it. And I hope you will use this extension. It's pretty neat. I don't think that it's used as we would want to, but I think it's a really great extension, and if you like it, go download it and use it. It's really cool. It will speed up your development a lot. Okay, let's back to the presentation. So let's talk about the debugging. If you installed the CLI and initialize the test part, you will be presented with a CLI Harness, shown on the right. It's a really great tool when you first run it, because you think, oh, I can test this right away with no deployments, but that's not the case. It's only usable for the basic controls that don't have a lot of logic. You can basically test the inputs, outputs, change the ratios of your canvas to see how it performs there, but you can't actually test your control without an actual environment. Why is that so? Because you need to mock the data every time, and you want to test it against the real data, or on the test data that is real, like the real data. There is no support for the web API. When you execute the web API request, you get mock responses that will not help you with the development because you need real values. And when you're used to debugging, even if you upload your control to the environment, you're debugging it with JS and you're writing TS. So I want to debug through my TypeScript, not JavaScript, when I'm working with the complex controls, because you'll get lost in JavaScript when you start using modern patterns like async await. It will output as gibberish in JS if you don't set the target to the modern ES version. And the worst thing here definitely are countless redeploys. You need to redeploy your control every time you make changes to make sure that it's working just the right way in the environment that you want to test it. And that's a really hard thing to do. You will lose a lot of time when doing it. And how can you speed things up? You can start using Fiddler. I'm not sure that most people are familiar with Fiddler, but it's a great tool that will help you to debug your controls in the real environments. it's not PCF specific. You can do it with any kind of front-end development. Basically what it does, it has a feature autoresponder that will intercept the HTTP request when you are trying to get your file from the server, but you as a middleman, fiddler, will just inject the local file there, and the browser will open the local file and not the file stored in the server. That way you can debug in production with simple changes to your code. No deploy is needed. You can just make the change in your local editor, refresh the page, and you will have the latest version of your code online presented in the browser. New version is available instantly, no need to wait, you just need to refresh. And there is something called source maps. It's not there out of the box, you need to tweak and hack thing around it to make it work, but after you set it up, you will be able to step out through TypeScript and not your JavaScript, and it's really a great thing to do because it's more readable. You will have multiple files like you organize it. You don't need to watch on the single bundle.js that is huge, and you can get lost in that bundle.js code. Okay, so enough talking. We need to show that working on the real environment. Okay, let's show up the fiddler. Let's open. So what do we have here? I have a model-driven app with contacts. Let's open the contact. I know that attention maybe goes to the right part and the Mr. Me6, but don't look to the Mr. Me6 now. Look at this part of the screen. So I have my PCF control bound to the single line of text here, and it basically, if I type, I made a typo, Dynamics Ninja, it will show up my picture from my GitHub account. That's an easy control. Maybe we can debug it in Harness, but that's not a way to do it because we're using some async await there, and it's not a good thing to do. Okay, let's jump into the code to see what is working. So that's the control I showed you before, the manifest file. So we have a simple text box, an image, and input handler. So when the text box text is changed, we just download, get a API request to GitHub service, get a GitHub user, choose its URL, and set the image source to that URL. If we see, we can have a separate TS file, so for better code organization, and we see that here. If we look at this, it's a simple GET request using Axios, and it just returns the object we want to fetch with the GET request. Okay, first of all, open the developer console and initiate hard reload, because I saw that I had cached version on my machine. Okay, now we have a blank one. We don't have the placeholder tags here, and if we go to index.ts, we can see that we have a placeholder here. So now when we open inspect and go to the source tab and search for index.ts, we can't find that file because there's no file here. Okay, strange, but let's go and check why. That's why because we are not using source maps at the moment, and we'll go through it in a minute or so. Okay, so now we want to make change to our project here. Let's say we want to type GitHub username. We don't want 3 dots, we want exclamation point here. Okay, and we want to initiate test mode with watch on. Why is that so? Because then every time we initiate the change, we can just close the harness for now. Every time we make change and save that file, it will generate the bundle.js for us, and the bundle.js is located in out folder bundle.js. And if we look at that file, it is really huge. We can't read it well enough, and that's why we need help Fiddler. But now let's go Fiddler everywhere. Let's start the Fiddler and start working to our goal, so injection of our local files to our browser. We open the Fiddler, we have live trafficking, that is tracking the HTTP requests here. Just put that on a green tick just to make it's capturing the traffic. Next one up, go to the autoresponder tab and activate that tab too, because if we don't have green ticks there, autoresponder will not work and we will not get anything into our browser. Okay, so now we need to instruct the autoresponder how to replace the file on the server with our local file. So basically what we do, we make a regex that will intercept the requests that end with our control name /bundle.js, and we want to replace that bundle.js with our local bundle.js. So we just input the path to our bundle.js. As I talked before, it's located in out folder, so out folder, controls GitHub, outer control, and the bundle.js. As we can see here, we can just put it to that path and click save. Okay, now we have that condition here, and we also need to turn it up to actually work. When you got this part working, all you need to do is go back to your browser, and first thing is open the developer tools, because you need to right click on the refresh button and empty cache and hard refresh. Otherwise, Dynamics is always working with cached resources and you will get the resource from the server, not the file. With that, you instruct the browser to go to your resource and load that resource. As you can see, now we have a placeholder with the 2 exclamation points here, like we have it in code. If I want to add one more, okay, one more, we can see that the new bundle has been built. Okay, hit reload. We don't need hard reload anymore. We can see that now we have three signs at the end, so we are getting our code from the local machine. So now we just make changes and we'll always have the latest version of our control in the environment. Of course, for the first time you need to import the control as a solution or push it with a push command. No matter what, you just need to push it and configure it on the environment. But now if we search for the bundle.js, it's not this one, so it's this one that says GitHub outer control. If we expand this a little bit, we see that we can debug through this file because code is like in one line and hard to debug. So if you are on a production environment, because it produces the minified version, it's beautified and here on the screen, but if you're working on a production environment, you need to debug something on a production, you have minified code and you need to somehow debug the component against the real data. All you need to do is use source maps. Source maps are basically the instructions that are telling the machine which line of JavaScript is which line of TypeScript. So if you open the TypeScript code, the debugger will know to stop on your breakpoints set on the TypeScript file, because you have that map file that will provide him the mapping. But that's not possible with the out-of-the-box configuration of the PCF projects. So first, what you need to do is go to the tsconfig and in compiler options add a simple line that says source map equals true. What basically it says, when we save the file, any file here like service.ts or index.ts, it will create also a map file with the bundle.js. So we will use source map. That way we instruct the TypeScript that we want to use the source maps. But the problem here, we need to stop our watch because we'll not get the right data after we set everything up. That's the first step. So basically just go to the tsconfig add source map. But since the PCF framework uses Webpack as a bundler tool, we need to instruct the Webpack 2 that we will use source map, and maybe instruct him when will we use the source map. But basically we can just tell him, hey, I want to use source map no matter what, just include the source, just create the source maps for me. You need to go to the node modules in your project, search for the PCF scripts all down below. So PCF scripts, expand that, scroll all the way down to webpack config, open that file too. Okay, and go to get webpack config method and search for the OOB config object. There you have dev tool, something that you can define, dev tool, that you will use source maps as your dev tool. You can maybe want to use source maps only for production, don't want to use source maps on the development because you will have non-minified code and maybe you can easily debug it with the unminified code that way. But here we instruct Webpack create the source map every time we use we build our component, so we initiate the Webpack config. Okay, save that file. So dev tool equals source map, easy as that. After that we can again go with our test component with watch, initiate that, and if you set everything up, again close this one, you can see that now two files are produced after the Webpack, bundle.js and bundle.js.map. You can just collapse not modules and go to your out folder, and as you can see now we have bundle.js and bundle.js.map. We can open map file. It's a lot of text that you can't read well, but basically it contains all the code from your TypeScript here. Just close that one. So the main thing that you need to remember is that this one is also located in the same folder as your bundle.js. And now we want to inject that file also to our browser, because our browser will now search for the source maps. Because if we open the bundle.js and go all the way down, we can see that it requires bundle.js map. And basically, if there is no mapping, it will not use it. If there is map file, it will use it. But with out-of-the-box features, it is not included in your solution. You will never upload the source maps directly to environment, and it's not recommended though, because you will have doubled your code that way, because bundle.js, that map basically contains all the TypeScript code. So JS plus TypeScript, you don't need to have that in your environment. You just need to have that when you're debugging your controls. Okay, now we go back to the fiddler and add a new rule. In that rule we define just the same, just input .map at the end and point it to the map file in our project. Save that, activate it, okay, load a fiddler and initiate empty cache plus hard refresh once again, because we have a new rule that needs to be executed. Okay, so we have our control loaded, but this time if we search for, so GitHub service, it's the second file that we are using in our project, click on that service and boom, as you can see, we have the TypeScript file just here. And for example, if we want to set a breakpoint here and start typing here, so D, you will see that breakpoint hit. We see that we got a response data. We have the object for the user named D on the GitHub. And every time we type something else, as just a random key, we got a new response. So now we can debug through the TypeScript code rather than our JavaScript. And the other good thing is we are doing it against the real data, not the mocked version. And when we go back to Fiddler, turn out the responder off, just initiate the hard refresh, everything will be back to normal. We'll get the code that's on the server without a placeholder, and you're not affecting your users that way. And that's really good way to debug your controls. Okay, let's hit X and go back to presentation. So next part is GitHub action and the automation for the PCF controls. We need to remove the manual work that we don't want to do, and in this case we want to produce the managed and unmanaged solutions straight away when we push the new commit, pull requests, or basically we want to create a new release from our repository. The creating a new release, you know that you need to have more than a few clicks just to achieve that. Run the build locally, copy the files, upload them to GitHub, release it, and stuff like that. And maybe we can automate it. If you're using the GitHub action provided with the human generator, it will have two triggers that will be triggered manually, or on commit or pull request. And easy as that, you can create your releases. And how can you create a GitHub action? I can show you into the demo and what will you achieve with it. Okay, so let's open our GitHub Avatar control and look for GitHub workflows. So we can see that build YAML is there. that defines everything we talked about on the slide in the YAML syntax. And how can you add it? Just Control-Shift-P and PCF and search for add GitHub action. When you click there, it will just create a YAML action for you, just for your project. All will be dynamically created for you, and when you upload it to GitHub, GitHub action will be initialized and it will trigger on every commit and pull request. Or you can do it manually. How can you do it manually? Let's open the GitHub and see how it's working. I have this particular control on my GitHub. As you can see, we have GitHub workflows here that contains the build YAML file. Go to the actions and click on the build. We can see that we have our build because it's called build.yaml. Okay, so we have that build here. We can run workflow with a simple click, not a commit because we didn't push any commit here, but run it manually. So I want to release a solution true false. If you're running it with false, it will just build it. So if you have any errors, check for errors, but if you pass true, it will start and initiate the creation of release after the build process successfully ended. So we see that build started. Click on it. We see the new fancy workflow experience. We have one job running. Click on that job. We see the build here. Open that up. And we can see that actions are running. So the first one ran successfully. Now we are using Node.js, initializing Node.js. We are getting the solution version, the solution name. Now the npm is installing all dependency. After that, we'll run the ms build command that will trigger the creation of our zip files for managed and unmanaged solutions. As I said at start, I want to build managed and unmanaged solution. If you don't have, for example, if you don't want to do unmanaged, it will just skip the unmanaged part and it will not do the unmanaged solution but only managed. And after everything is done, as you can see now, we are ms build now, just the way you do it on your local machine running ms build command. It will just build the control and output with two zip files, one for managed, one for unmanaged. If we go back to our control repository here, we see that the release is now empty. But after the job is successfully executed, we'll get those solutions released as a GitHub release on our repository. And we are nearly there. Job is almost at the end. It's uploading the solution. Okay, and as we can see, managed, unmanaged solution created, uploaded, managed, uploaded, unmanaged. Everything is good. And if we go to the releases, click on the releases, and now we see that we have GitHub Avatar Control version 1.2 uploaded as a release with managed and unmanaged solution. What it does in the background, it basically reads our solution XML from our repository. So we have a solution folder, our control folder, source, and solution, and it gets the version that is used here in the solution XML, and it creates a solution with that version and expose it as the release. And I think if you're working with open source technologies, if you're open sourcing your PCF, it's a great way to automate your job. I think that's the last tool that I wanted to show you. And thank you all for joining. If you want to contact me, you can contact me on LinkedIn, my blog, or where I'm most active in Twitter, and ask the questions for related to the session development for the platform in general, or anything about platform or the Dynamics 365. Thank you guys for joining once again, and this session will be uploaded on YouTube in 14 days or so. So if you want to see it again, you can easily go onto YouTube and check it out once again. Thanks again, and bye till next time.